Hey everybody, welcome back. I am so excited that you're here. Like for real, I am so excited that you're here. I am Jenny Hendricks and I have an absolute treat for you today. We are doing the second part of our Main Street series. I'm going to introduce you to my very good friend, Ryan Paul, who is going to take you through the history of Main Street. Now, the reason I'm talking to Ryan Paul is Ryan is a professor of history at Southern Utah University. He knows everything about this town and its history. One of the most fascinating people that you ever want to talk to, and I'm so grateful that you are here. Thank you for taking the time. I'm super, super excited.
I'm happy to do it and looking forward to it. And while we're here, before we really get started, what I want you to do is take a look up here at these wonderful yin and yang symbols. So this building here, before it was the barbershop, was the Golden Rule, and the Golden Rule was the forerunner to JCPenney.
Oh, wow.
So they're here as a Golden Rule store, you know, do unto others. And from the earliest photos we have of this building, these yin and yangs were there. This used to be the Chamber of Commerce above it, but I always thought that it's because of the Golden Rule, right? That you do unto others, so yin and yang. So these are not creations of the 60s scene in Cedar City, which might have been interesting.
Yeah.
But these were here from the very beginning of when this was done, 1930s, and it's pretty cool.
1930s.
Yeah, one of the cool architectural features of this community that you're not going to expect or notice unless you look at it and see it.
What have you got for us next?
We're going to head up to Bullock Drug, the old Sheep Association.
This is my favorite. Let's go. Okay, now we are in front of the Bullock Drug building, which I showed you in our previous Series 1 video. But there's some cool stuff that I didn't know about this building. Ryan, what do we need to know?
So first of all, you need to understand the importance of sheep in Cedar City, right? So it is critical to the success of this community.
Right.
So after the Mountain Meadows Massacre, the population of Cedar went from 1,000 to 300, right?
I did not know that.
Yeah, and the only thing that saved it, we call it a saving grace, was sheep and cattle. That was the reason to be here.
Wow.
So these communities were all cash poor.
Right.
Hence the need for banks and other things that needed to come in. So anytime you needed goods, you always bartered.
Okay.
So what happened is the community got together with the very first sheep herd that they would use, and actually people would get paid for their labor with sheep or portions of the herd, or the flock, I guess. And then they would create this structure where all of the other transactions would take place. So it was like a co-op, right? You owned a part of the local herd, and when lambs were sold and when wool when the sheep were shorn, they sold the wool and the lambs, and then you got a percentage of money that you could spend here.
Fascinating.
So this worked in co-ops as well. So like, for example, when people went on LDS missions, instead of congregations giving money, they would give IOUs at the sheep store or the co-op, so you could go in and change things. So hence the Cedar Sheep Association was formed to manage that cooperative herd. And then every so often they'd bring animals to butcher, and kids would line up to get scraps to share amongst the community.
Wow.
So this is where you got all of your goods. So if you wanted to order something from Sears or Montgomery Ward's, you could order it. The Sheep Association would pay cash, but you would take it out of your share of the sheep herd. What's exciting about this building is this is one of the few examples in Cedar City where people invested in historic structures and maintained that integrity.
So important.
Yeah.
What have we got next?
We're going to head up to the Bank of Southern Utah.
I can't wait. We've moved on now to the Bank of Southern Utah, and this is some cool stuff. What do we need to know?
So, first of all, the Bank of Southern Utah here is on Harding Avenue, which is important because Warren Harding was the only sitting president ever to come to Cedar City. He came almost 100 years ago when the train came in 1923. He was the first passenger train, because you would say to yourself, if you knew anything about Warren Harding, why would we name a street after him? But that's why. He's the first and only sitting president ever to come to this Southern Utah town, which is a whole nother story.
That's cool.
The Bank of Southern Utah, if you remember, we talked about when the Sheep Association had everything was a barter economy.
Yeah.
Well, as it turns out, Nathan Porter, who at the time was the principal at the school, the university, he realized that for this economy to grow, you needed cash. and a bank was the way to do it. And so he got some people working together to create the Bank of Southern Utah. It was across the street, actually it was right here next to us. And then they built this building in the 1920s, but it was really critical. And in fact, once the bank came in, the economy, the income of the businesses doubled by 25 and sometimes 50%.
Wow.
Because they had active cash now to do that. So fast forward to the Great Depression, this is the building that existed. The state bank laws required you to have a certain amount of money as a reserve. Well, as it turns out, Iron County decided that year that they were going to not collect the taxes in December to help people out and push it till the first of the year. But the bank depended on that tax revenue to keep that threshold. So what happened was on Christmas Eve, they realized they wouldn't have the money to meet the needs of their required depositors, so they had to close.
Wow.
So they closed the bank. The story, the doctor of Cedar City comes and gathers his family together, puts his hand in his pocket, pulls out a handful of change and slaps it on the table and says, "This is all we have. This is it." So they go to the state bank board, the people of Cedar City, and they say, "We want to reopen this bank." And the bank board says, "Great, $100,000 in the midst of the Depression."
Wow.
So like they had done for the school, people mortgaged their homes, they cashed in life insurance policies. The teachers of Iron County went without pay for 1 month to donate their pay to this bank fund. And even after all of this, they raised $90,000, which didn't meet the need. So they went back to the state bank board, the Chamber of Commerce, which really led out on this issue, and said, "Hey, we've got this money, can we do it?" And the bank board said, "You're crazy, because if you do, the moment you do this, the moment you open these doors, people are going to run and get their money and you're going to fold. But we'll let you do it. We'll let you fail this small Cedar City, Southern Utah town." So the bank had a big opening. They opened the doors. People lined up. There's a wonderful photo of people lining up at the bank. And it's not the line to withdraw, it's the line to deposit. And that day, the bank made another $30,000, making this building, the State Bank of Southern Utah, the only bank in the state that closed during the Depression that actually reopened.
No kidding, that is fascinating. And I have to tell you, that is one of the most incredible things about the history of this community is the founding of Southern Utah University. It was Branch Normal School back then. The story of the Bank of Southern Utah during the Depression. If you have a chance to go dive into those stories, you will not be disappointed. They are fascinating and such an incredible example of what can happen when a community pulls together.
And that's a great point. If you look at the history of Iron County, the subtitle of that book is Community Above Self.
Yeah.
And more as we talk about the stories of this town, you will see that played out more and more, that the community comes together to support the needs of the collective other than the individual.
Yep. What a great history and what a great asset for this community. What's next?
We're going to head up to the Cedar Theater.
We are at one of my very, very most favorite places on Main Street. We are at the Downtown Theater, and the history to this place is so fascinating. Ryan, tell us what you know about this beautiful old lady here.
So, not many people know this, but the first Hollywood movie shot in Utah came out of Cedar City, was in Zion.
Okay.
So the train came in 23, and it does two things. It brings iron ore out of the iron mines, right. Making Iron County for many years the richest county in the state.
Right.
But it also brings people in to see the iron rust on the hill.
Uh-huh.
So one of the benefits of that was we had some local brothers, Gronway and Chauncey Perry, who had connections in Hollywood, went back to Hollywood and say, "Why are you shooting all these Westerns on the back lots? Come to Cedar City, we'll get you down to these places and you can film Westerns in the real West."
Wow.
So the very first film, 1923, Tom Mix, Deadwood Coach comes here, films. So the start of the Utah film industry was right here,
That's
right in this community.
That's
And
great.
so the Cedar Theater actually, first of all, was called the Thorley Theater, and it was one of the first movie theaters in town. So this is where movies premiered. This is where all the community events were. This is where you played the organ music and everything else. So movies have a really important place in this community. Years later, the Cedar Theater is created and it becomes the movie palace in Cedar City.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, right next to it, they didn't sell concessions. It was called the Zion Candy Kitchen. So you would go in, buy your popcorn, buy your candy, buy your drinks, and then go into the movie.
Okay.
Until they realized that they could make a lot more money selling
Right.
popcorn than doing movies.
Right.
So from the 30s, 40s, 50s, this was really the spot that you saw all of the movies in Cedar City. So what happens is eventually it becomes, as movies change, a dollar theater, and we are just so lucky that even though it's not our theater still, we have the marquee, we have those things. This was fundamental. I call this the building of firsts,
Yes.
right? The first movie, the first kiss that many people had, first dates. This is that place on Cedar City.
So Ryan, right behind us is the city offices, the police department. It's a beautiful building, but it hasn't always been that.
Well, it's always been a beautiful building, but it hasn't always been the police department and the post office. So this is a great story. So in the 1800s, in the late 1800s, the LDS Church had built on that corner what we call the Cedar City Tabernacle.
Okay.
And essentially what it was a big building with an assembly hall inside. And that building existed there for many, many years. That was the center of spiritual and in some cases intellectual spots for the people to go. So this is where any LDS general authorities would come. This is where politicians would speak. This is where the Chautauquas would have been held, because the campus of the university didn't have a building that had a big enough space to that to happen for. So scout meetings, all community meetings were held in this building. This was the biggest assembly hall space that happens. So as time progresses, more people move in, the dynamics of the population change, more LDS members come in, and so they build separate meeting halls. And it's very clear that the tabernacle is just too small. It doesn't fit the needs of the community or the church anymore. While this is all going on, we have the Great Depression, right? We talked about that at the bank. So the senators and the congressmen from Utah had arranged to get a federal contract to build a federal building in Cedar City.
Okay.
Which is huge, right? Jobs,
Yeah,
construction, all that stuff.
Big deal.
So they decide it's going to be a new post office is what they need. But there's nowhere to put it because the land is all full, everything else. The Chamber of Commerce, the businesses are very adamant that that new post office be on Main Street.
Right.
Because that's going to draw people into Maine.
Yes.
But the church, there's nowhere open space. So they negotiate with the local leaders of the LDS Church and they decide that they will sell the tabernacle to tear down.
Wow.
So they can build the post office.
Wow.
On the condition that a new church is built before they tear it down.
Okay.
So hence, if the Rock Church, which I'm sure you've shown people, is the building that is built during the Depression by the community to do this. But the federal money doesn't just pay for the whole building.
Okay.
So again, people come out, they raise money, they have bake sales and all kinds of things to get enough money to build the post office. And so the tabernacle is raised, R-A-Z-E-D, and the post office is raised, R-A-I-S-E-D, and built for that purpose, making this kind of the center of Main Street, right? This community for a long time, this was the center of church, of state, of economics. All of this was here.
Right.
Now we're spread out a little further,
Yes.
but this is where you went to do pay all your bills, pay your taxes, shop, go to church, was along these few blocks of Main Street. So this anchors it. So when it quits being a post office, the city takes it over and makes it into the city offices. So a lot of people were upset they tore the tabernacle down, but this really is the business community of Cedar City
Right.
saying, we want that land, and your building's
And it
not...
needs to remain the center of the community.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So the church has moved a step back, and now they're having the same problem with the Rock Church, right? It's
Yeah.
just too small to meet the needs
Right.
of the congregations that worship there. But now it is a historic landmark, right?
No,
So you
it's
can't do
incredible.
anything.
It's
But it's
incredible.
one more thing that the community does that's a big sacrifice,
Right.
but you do those things in the Depression to help the community grow.
Exactly.
So I'm excited to talk about this building because this is really important in the history of our community. if you cast your eyes over here, the Cedars Hotel, this is the first hotel that we had. Well, not the first, but the first really official hotel.
Okay.
So the first hotel would be like somebody's upper level of their house, more like a bed and breakfast.
Right.
But this is the first hotel on Main Street and in Cedar City. And again, this is the desire to make Main Street not only the economic center, the spiritual center, the intellectual center, but this is where you're going to stay, right? So this is where visitors are going to come. This is the burgeoning era of tourism, right? This is as the national park system is coming online, as the trains coming to Cedar City. We talked about the Perry brothers that got the movies to come. They're also the ones that got investment from Union Pacific to come and build the lodges at Zion, Bryce, Cedar Breaks, and the North Rim of the Grand Canyon.
Cool. I didn't know that.
So they're here one day because it was a hotel, and that whole bottom space was a restaurant or cafe, and they heard there were some surveyors and they get in town. They get this idea that we could show you that place, right? This is where we have our horses and our cattle, and so they start taking these surveyors down into Zion and down into further southern Utah, and then they get this idea that maybe we could do this as a living, right? So they start before the train even comes all the way to Cedar City. They go out to Lund, which is 30 miles west of us, and they pick people up at the depot and they drive them in here. They stay at the Cedars and they go down and explore these places that you're driving in dirt roads and mud roads. I mean, you could rent, all the cars were open, so you'd rent like those goggles and those old kind of old-timey duster coats. But I always say that this hotel is the birthplace of Southern Utah tourism.
I love it.
Right, this is where it all starts, right here on Cedar City's Main Street.
That is so fascinating. And of course, today, a large part of our economy is still tourism. And I think that has been something that has been fairly constant throughout the years. We live in a beautiful place. People want to see it. People want to come here. So
yeah, tourism is an icon of Iron County. Yeah. You cannot, Cedar City does not exist the way it does without tourism.
Yep, I love it. What's next?
We're going to head down to the event, to the fire.
Okay, stick with us. This is going to be cool. Now we are here about the middle of Main Street and looking to the east. Ryan, tell us about the tragedy that happened on Main Street.
Keep in mind, when people come to Cedar City, they expect to see a Main Street that has buildings on both sides.
Yes.
As you know, that's not the case for us.
Yes.
These buildings are relatively new. Yes. Imagine, if you will, that all of this from here all the way to the end was structures and buildings and those kinds of things. So right about where Firehouse Subs hits was a gas station, right? An old service station. So you've got Cardin's here, which at the time was the Iron County Record, the local newspaper that existed. Gas station, and then right where the Chinese restaurant is was a building called the Lay Furniture Building. And they sold, furniture. They had some apartments above, but it was primarily a furniture store. Well, in the Lay building, they're doing some renovation. Turns out what they think happened is one of the workers took a smoke break, put their cigarette out, but didn't extinguish it completely. And about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, that ignites into a fire that begins burning everything on Main Street. So the fire department comes quickly. They arrive. They're terrified because if the wind blows the fire to the south, it's going to hit that gas station, and then it's game over, right? So the fire trucks from St. George are coming up. They're all mobilizing because they think it's going to be a big cataclysmic inferno. But the fire, I guess good or ill, burns the other way and ends up burning down Hughes Cafe. It burns down the Lay building completely and a number of other buildings all the way down to about where this Lynn sign is, maybe a little further past that. But one of the more interesting stories is Dave Bentley, who recently passed away. You probably knew him. He was a junior young fireman at the time. So he gets out of bed, he comes up to the chief, what can I do? And the chief says, take this hose and I want you to shoot the fire hose into this one window of the hotel. Don't do anything else. So he spent the whole time while the buildings were burning, putting water into this one room. After everything was done, Dave Bentley went to the fire chief and said, I don't understand why you did this. And the fire chief said, when we got here, this old lady, and I don't remember her name, came up to the fire chief and said, all the money I have in the world is in my mattress. Man. And so they dedicated one hose to keeping her room wet and soggy so her life savings wouldn't be burned up.
That's incredible.
So that's the biggest fire in Cedar City that burned down a good portion of our main street.
Thanks so much for joining us for this historical tour of downtown. I am a history nerd. I love this stuff. I think it's fascinating. There is so much more history to Cedar City, and Ryan knows it all. If you like this video, let me know. Give me a comment, hit the like button. If you would like more history of Cedar City, we would love to be able to bring it to you. In the meantime, we drop these videos every Thursday. Remember to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and Ryan, I can't thank you enough for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
We'll see you soon.